attempts to sanitize and reshape history fit a narrow ideological narrative that amounts to nothing less than the erasure of history. We also have to be reminded that we cannot reverse America's journey towards a more just and equitable future. History demands an honest, transparent conversation and a commitment to an evolving understanding of how the past shapes the present and the future. And I make a commitment to all of you, and I'm not alone in doing this because I know that the entire JANM family does, is that we make a commitment to stand with you, to stand with all of the national parks to ensure that public history is not erased, that it's not homogenized, and that it's not censored. Museums are not neutral. They can never be neutral. And in this climate we find ourselves in, there are some museums like JANM that have become sites of resistance. It's in moment when truth is under attack. We, the communities around Manzanar, Amachi, Minidoka, national parks across the country, we have a responsibility, and all of the communities that support these sites, we have a responsibility to stand firm. We have a civic, to preserve history honestly is a civic duty. It's a defense of democratic values, and it's a commitment to those whose stories have been erased. To do anything else would be to sever our thread to the future. Because one thing that I am so deeply reminded about, in American history, in my own history in South Africa, memory is sacrosanct. And when memory is under attack, in an age when memory is under attack, memory becomes an act of resistance. Thank you very much. Thank you. It's now my incredible honor to bring up to the stage Dennis Arguelles, who is the Southern California Director of the National Parks Conservation Association, the association that is standing firm to protect not just Japanese American sites of conscience, but standing firm to protect every single national park in this country. So Dennis, thank you for your courage and come up to
Thank you, Anne. Good morning. And thank you for coming out on this muggy day. Now, there are dozens of events taking place across the country today. People are coming out to protect our history, protect our parks. And indeed, the planning for today's event actually started with a conversation about our national parks. The organization that the institution that my organization, the National Parks Conservation Association, has fought to protect and grow for over 100 years. But what exactly are our national parks? Yes, they are places of spectacular natural beauty, and we've decided to protect them in perpetuity. Some have even called them America's best idea. Personally, I feel there are some better American ideas, like ending slavery, the 1964 Civil Rights Act. But our parks play a critical role in preserving and telling the stories that shape our nation, including those chapters where we fail to live up to our own democratic ideals. A real democracy doesn't shy from confronting such truths, despite how painful and unflattering. And it's in telling these stories that our national parks transcend being those beautiful spaces and become important democratic institutions. Unfortunately, our parks face an existential crisis. This administration and its allies would happily sacrifice them to short-term profit and corporate greed, and rewrite history to promote their own exclusionist narratives. If given the chance, they will eliminate up to 3/4 of our parks and devastate the ranks of our national park rangers, a plan that's already in process. Since January, the National Park Service has lost nearly 25% of its staff, with more draconian cuts along the way. This administration's recent order to supposedly bring sanity back to American history is nothing less than an attempt to impose its own narrow, jingoistic, and chauvinistic view of American heritage. To this, we join in demanding, hands off our history. People and places will not be erased. Japanese American exclusion and incarceration during World War II is just one of the many stories told by our national parks. But it reverberates so powerfully because of what we are witnessing today, including right on this spot just a little more than a week ago. The militarization of our streets, stripping of due process, inhumane detentions, and the racist scapegoating of people of color. It reminds me of Mark Twain's quote, "History doesn't repeat itself, but it often rhymes." MBCA is proud to stand with survivors, descendants, and allies of Manzanar, Tule Lake, Minidoka, Honolulu, Bainbridge Island, Amachi, Latuna Canyon, Topaz, Poston, Heart Mountain, and other sites that tell the story of the unjust incarceration of Japanese Americans. We will resist efforts to plunder our public lands and whitewash our past. And we pledge our support to those of you on the front lines of protecting our parks, history, and democracy. Thank you. Now it's my honor to bring up to the stage my very good friend and representative from the Manzanar Committee, Glenn Kitayama.
Thank you, Dennis. You know, we go way back to UCLA. I think we both had black hair back then. Good morning. I'm Glenn Kitayama, and I represent the Manzanar Committee. On the early morning of December 8, 1941, just hours after the launch of Pearl Harbor, my maternal grandfather, Shintaro Nakagawa, was dragged out of his bed and arrested by the FBI. My mother, Kimiko Nakagawa, remembered the terror of that morning as a 9-year-old girl, wondering if she would ever see her father again. And this is what we see happening right now. The Justice Department held my grandfather without due process and without medication to treat his type 1 diabetes. His only crime was that he was a Japanese immigrant fisherman from Chimbal Island. Like many of you, many of my friends out here, we never thought that we'd witness anything like this in our lifetime, and yet here we are today. The Trump administration has used the Alien Enemies Act for the first time since World War II. The Trump administration has used the Alien Enemies Act for the first time since World War II to kidnap and arrest immigrants just like my grandfather Shintaro. During World War II, the late Nikkei journalist James Amura asked rhetorically, "Has the Gestapo come to America?" Yes. I ask that same question today. Yeah. Consider this. They've begun to overhaul the National Park Service, the Smithsonian, and other public institutions to censor how American history is remembered, presented, and taught. They punished universities for allowing free speech on campus. They've targeted the free press as enemies of the people. And as Ann Burroughs noted, sadly, many of these institutions have bowed down to the times' demands. Taken together, what does that look like to you? Nobel Prize-winning journalist Maria Ressa of the Rappler witnessed something similar when she was in prison for reporting the truth about then Philippine President Rodrigo Duterte. She warned right now that what we are witnessing is death by 1,000 cuts to democracy. To paraphrase Ressa, we need to decide what kind of world that we want to live in. We cannot normalize impunity. We cannot normalize a police state like we saw last week. And throughout the past few months out here in LA, we cannot normalize fascism. Call it what it is. We have to keep fighting for our rights and the rights of others. We've been through this before. We're not going away. Democracy is fragile, and we need to keep going. Now, I know these are really dark times right now, but remember, there's always hope. We don't give up hope. Today, President Duterte is in prison. Maria Ressa is free to testify about what happened back then and what's happening now. Let's let that be a lesson for all of us. Thank you. Now, it is my extreme honor. I get the best part here because I get to introduce our next two speakers. The first one will be, I believe the first one will be Dr. Takashi Hoshizaki. He's 99 years old.
Wow.
He's a cancer survivor. He's incarcerated at Watanabe. After that, we have Kyoko Oda, who was a World War II cancer survivor, 80 years old, born and incarcerated at Toomey Lake. Please welcome.
You got tired here? Let me take a turn.
And you were, give it a little more detail. We were sentenced to 3 years in the federal penitentiary. And after serving about 2 years, I guess we had released us in 2 years. And although we were released, we were still under the jurisdiction of federal prison. And so it was not until my 3 years time was up that I could then consider that I had free to go where I need to go. But then a few years later, President Truman, on his Christmas party, and I think it was 1946, had pardoned all the rest resistors. So now we were, as a free citizen, able to vote, having all the privileges of a regular citizen. Now, what has happened in the interim is that the Korean War broke out, and I was studying for my master's at UCLA, and I got my second grant fellows. And I was still young enough, in fact, I think I'm one of the youngest grant resistors, being going up to 100 now, the whole situation happened almost 80 years ago. But the thing was that we had, excuse me, I'm going back and consider that with the draft confused here. Now, I was then drafted a second time, and then during the time that we were in camp, we were the Fair Play Committee was formed, and one of the fellows, Yoshio Komodo, was actually in our mountain trying to tell the people what had actually happened to us, that our civil rights was taken away, and we were in prison without due justice. So basically, I myself went into camp, 16 years old, and I knew nothing about really knew enough of the Constitution, knew nothing about our civil rights. And I began to thinking, and I think even today, how many people really understand what the Constitution of the United States really stands for? So anyway, Yoshio was preaching and trying to tell people what had actually happened to us. But then we formed a committee. He considered himself a fair play committee of one. And when the draft came up, the group of people, older men, got together with the ocean, and then they put it on the phone on the ground for the fair play committee training. And that gave the fair play committee, which was then trying to educate, get us free, get our justice back. So then, that gave the next boost to the fair play committee. But then, later on, when we were all out, and then President Truman pardoned us, then, but in the meantime, the publicity of what had happened in the camp was not very well publicized. In fact, the story was actually squelched, and many people did not know that such a thing had happened. And then, at the Vietnam War, the sunset began to ask about what why didn't we protest? And there's no real information to look at. But then, by the time the Vietnam War broke out, the protesting was going on more commonly, and Frank Chin ran across the story of what happened to the draft resistance and the fair play committee. And he literally blew up and did some more research, and he wrote an article in the Rock People about what had happened to the fair play committee and its members. And so that turned out sadly opened up questions from especially the Sunset. We then realized that yes, we did something did resist. And so anyway, but the fact is that that movement was completely, as we say, swept under the rugs. And so very few people knew about it. And so today, we look around and say the same thing now is happening. And now it turns out that we have now come back and the information is now being out. And so I tell all of you in the audience now that we should then go ahead and make sure that we talk about it and publicize what had happened to us and also to what is now happening to the others some 8 years later.